Chapter 13. The sand was the first thing I tasted, and it was a flavor I had earned with every lie I had ever told. It was a coarse, dry, and bitter coating, filling my mouth like the ashes of the empire I had just watched collapse into the white void. I spat it out, with my chest moving in jagged, desperate hitches, and I scraped my tongue with fingers that were still slick and dark with Louis's arterial blood. I didn't care about the germs. I didn't care about the grit grinding between my teeth like 1,000 tiny gears. I just wanted the taste of my own failure to vanish, but the desert was relentless. The sand stuck to my blood-stained lips like a curse that refused to be silenced. I stood up, and the world performed a sickening, violent tilt. My legs felt like they were made of blown glass, vibrating and ready to shatter under the weight of a body that was no longer entirely mine. Around me, the endless desert stretched towards every horizon, a golden furnace of my own making. The bright blue sky was burning my eyes. Its perfect, cloudless clarity was a cruel insult to the red-hot haze of my vision. "Pardon-moi," I whispered, though there was no one left to hear. The wind was a physical assault, a hot, howling force that whistled through the tattered velvet of my dress, trying to bury me in the dunes before I could reach the water. Then I saw it, that thin blue strip far off, the ocean. I had been here before. This wasn't Africa. This wasn't Earth. It was a corner of the universe I had carved out of my own loneliness, a place where I had once sat on this very shore, wrapped in this same red dress, playing the role of a cryptic goddess for a girl who was lost in her own human sadness. I remembered her. I remembered telling her that she was smart. I had told her to break the rules of fate. I had looked into her eyes and seen a spark of strength that I envied. And now I was the one crawling across the dunes, a broken queen with a stolen crown of Archmage fire that was melting my bones. Every step was an absolute agony. The power of the 12 Archmages, no longer suppressed by the Elven 10 or the proximity of Max's golden warmth, was a jagged, sentient storm inside my chest. I was leaking in a way that was almost obscene. Pale, sickly red light was sipping from my skin pores, scorching the sand where I stepped, leaving a trail of black melted glass behind me. My skin felt translucent, stretched to the snapping point by the mana that was screaming to return to the void. "C'est ridicule," I hissed, with a dry, hysterical laugh catching in my throat. It turned into a cough that brought up the metallic tang of blood. I have the strength of 100 men in my veins, and I cannot even hold my own heart together. I saw a flash of something in the sand, a needle, a syringe, the phantom of a mistake I had made a long time ago. My mind was fracturing. The memories of Vicky and Masha were drifting through the heat like ghosts. I saw Vicky standing on a dune, holding a withered daisy, with her eyes accusing me of my wrongdoings. I saw Masha on the frozen ground, with her face being stuck in the moment I had failed to save her. I tried. I screamed at the empty dunes, with my voice cracking into a jagged shriek. I wanted to brighten your lives. I wanted to be the one who fixed the world. At least I thought so. But the wind only mocked me, carrying the sound of Sasha's laughter. "You are a starving wolf, Martha." I reached the shoreline and didn't so much sit as I did collapse. The sand here was a damp and cool, but the relief was a lie. The ocean spread out like a foamy gray blanket. The waves were marching towards the shore like an army of ghosts coming to reclaim a debt. The wind was playing with my tangled black hair, whipping it across my face and stinging my eyes with salt. I pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them, sitting exactly as I had sat when I was waiting for that girl on the shoreline. I stared at the muddy, blurry water, waiting for someone, anyone, to appear out of the dunes and ask me why I was sad. I wanted to tell them everything. I wanted to spill the sticky lump of my thoughts until I was empty. But the shore stayed empty. The only thing moving was the sand rolling back, dusting my pale, shaking hands. Max, I whispered. The name was a shard of glass in my throat. I remembered the sensation of his chest beneath my palm back in the lab. I remembered the way his gold essence was pulsing, being a warm, inviting sun that I had reached for in my moment of absolute terror. I remembered the look in his eyes when he realized what I was doing. It wasn't the look of a boy being rescued. It was the look of a boy realizing his savior was just a different kind of butcher. I hid my face in my hands, and for the first time in centuries, the Red Queen broke. Tears of blood and salt ran down my cheeks, tracing hot lines through the dust and the gore on my face. I cried for Vicky, I cried for Masha, but mostly I cried for the boy who had once called me a monkey and grabbed my hand to lead me through a summer field on earth. "Is this what you wanted, Martha?" I whispered to myself with my voice shivering. "Is this the victory you had planned?" "I saved him," another part of me answered, with a voice cold and sharp like a razor. "I took him from the tank. I killed the man who was bleeding him dry." "No," I argued with a silence, with my fingers digging into my own scalp. "You didn't save him. You just moved the feast to a different table. You looked at him, the only thing that has ever made you feel like you weren't a corpse, and you saw a refill. You saw a battery." "I was dying," the Queen's voice screamed back. "I would have burned to ash. I needed his heat." "You always need," I sobbed, rocking back and forth on the damp sand. "That's what you are, a mouth, a void. You told that girl back then that reality is what you make it. Well, look at what you have made. You've made a world where the only person you love is terrified of your touch. You've made a reality where the only warmth you ever feel is the stolen fire you ripped out of a boy who trusted you." I began to laugh, with a high, broken sound that sounded like glass breaking in a silent room. I laughed at the irony of it all. I had spent almost 3 years on Earth playing at being human, and then pretending that I could love a boy without destroying him. I had told myself I was his protector, the only one who saw the person behind the battery. But when the fire got too hot, when the Archmage power started to shred my soul, I didn't hesitate. I lunged for his light. I had proven that the Red Queen doesn't love, she consumes. I reclaimed him, I giggled, with the sound turning into a sob. I reclaimed him right into a grave of my own making. Congratulations, Martha. You're the best jailer in the 6 worlds. The sun began dipping towards the horizon, turning the blue sky into a bruised, violent purple. The wind grew colder, carrying a faint, impossible scent, the smell of vanilla candles and lavender laundry detergent. It was a phantom of Sasha's fortress, a reminder of the place where Max was safe, far away from my red velvet hunger. He was in a room with heart-shaped stickers and plushes. He was breathing air that didn't smell like blood. And I was here, on a shore that didn't exist, clutching a handful of sand and watching it slip through my fingers like time. I remembered the note I had left for that girl on Earth. Accept life as it is. Let it go. It will get easier, trust me. Liar, I whispered to my reflection in the dark, rising tide. It never gets easier. It just gets quieter. The noise of the world just fades until all you can hear is your own heartbeat. And even that sounds like an apology. You told her to fight, Martha. You told her to be brave, and look at you. You're just a stain on the sand now. A monster waiting for a sunset that will never be enough. I laid down on the damp shore, letting the freezing water of the mirage ocean soak into my dress. The velvet became a heavy, cold weight, pulling me down into the sand. I stared at the horizon, where the stars were beginning to peek through the haze of the desert. Somewhere out there, Max was learning how to be whole without me. Somewhere, the real, disappointed potato was finally free of being a passenger in someone's head and a vampire in his heart. I saw a vision of the girl I had met here. She was running. She was running 13 kilometers through the blazing sun, with her fists clenched and eyes shut against the dust. She was fighting the fate I had envisioned for her, and she had won. "You're the first who ran towards something, not away from me," I murmured, with this memory being a bitter comfort. Max hadn't run towards me. He has been dragged, and when he finally had the chance to see me clearly, he was the one to trigger the explosion that blew us apart. He hadn't just broken the spire, he had broken the connection between us. He had chosen the vanilla and the stone walls of White Rock over the red velvet and the empty doors of my world. "I'm glad I met you, Max," I whispered, with the words disappearing into the cold of the endless sea. "You will stick with me for a long time. Even if I am just a nightmare you will have to forget. I hope you will find a life that doesn't smell like ozone and fear. I hope you will find a girl who doesn't have fangs." I clutched a handful of sand, letting the grains slip through my fingers. I had tried to hold the sun in my hands, and I had been burned to the bones. Now I was just a shadow on a shoreline of memories, listening to the waves, telling me everything I had already lost. I saw the girl city in my mind, the massy glory of it, the gasoline and the wet leaves, the frosty day, the mysterious alley, and the daisy in the pavement. It all was ugly, and it was alive. And I was here, in a perfect, beautiful graveyard of my own design. "Fight," I whispered to the empty wind, with my eyes finally closing as the cold frost of the night began to settle on my skin. "You must fight, even if there's nothing left but the sand." But as the darkness pulled me in a soft, heavy blanket, I realized that I had finally reached the end of my strength. My shadow was no longer a petrifying creature. It was just a thin, gray shape on the sand. I was the Red Queen of a graveyard, and as the spire fell into the white void somewhere far beyond the dunes, I realized that for the first time in my life, I was finally, truly alone. The wind was tapping against the glass of reality, softer now, as if it was tired of fighting with the ghost. I surrendered to the silence, and the last thing I saw before the blackout was the image of a small, stubborn daisy poking through a crack in the pavement, waving a final, silent goodbye to the girl in the red dress.